The largest wealth transfer in history is happening right now, and 99% of you are going to watch it entirely evaporate. You have probably seen the headlines painting this financial fairy tale where millions of aging baby boomers just casually hand over the keys to the kingdom, leaving everyone swimming in cash. It sounds amazing, but here is the massive reality check. The true opportunity in this economy is not waiting around for a passive inheritance. It is the $5 trillion small business cliff. Right now, millions of unsexy, highly profitable blue-collar businesses owned by retiring boomers are quietly hitting the market. And if you are between the ages of 25 and 40, you have an unfair, built-in advantage over Wall Street. You have agility, you are tech-savvy, and you have the exact skills needed to modernize these outdated paper and pencil legacy systems. Today, we're going to expose exactly why the mainstream media's version of the Great Wealth Transfer is mostly fiction. We're going to walk through the exact roadmap of this massive economic shift. First, we're uncovering the inheritance fallacy that is blinding most people. Then, we're breaking down the broken advisory system that is leaving trillions up for grabs. And finally, I am handing you the exact 4-step playbook to acquire these cash-flowing assets with almost none of your own money. Yes, there is $124 trillion moving through the economic system between now and 2048. But if you think that means everyone gets a piece of the pie, you are setting yourself up for a brutal awakening. We're dealing with what is known as the inheritance fallacy. The media loves to scream that millennials are in line to inherit $46 trillion. But here's the catch. That wealth is heavily, almost aggressively concentrated. Over 50% of this entire transfer volume is held by high net worth and ultra high net worth households. That sounds complicated, but simply put, it means that literally the top 2% of the country is hoarding the massive slice of the pie, drastically skewing the average. However, the remaining half of this transfer still encompasses significant mid-tier assets, like everyday family homes, small businesses, and retirement savings, held by the broader boomer demographic. If you aren't in that top 2%, the idea that an ultra-wealthy windfall is just going to mysteriously drop into your lap is a dangerous delusion. But it absolutely does not mean the systemic trend excludes you. It just means you have to know where the money's actually flowing. Even for those who are technically in line for an inheritance, it is almost never a giant novelty check handed to you on a silver platter. We all expect a direct deposit, but the reality is so much messier. Before that wealth ever reaches the younger generations, we are going to see a massive horizontal transfer. Statistically, men pass away before their wives. So over the next 25 years, roughly 28 million widowed baby boomer women will first receive roughly $40 trillion in assets. The money doesn't jump straight down to the kids, it moves sideways to the surviving spouse. And this sideways movement creates a massive advice gap. The financial industry historically ignored these women, focusing entirely on their husbands. Suddenly, you have millions of widows holding massive, complex estates with zero trustworthy guidance. By the time that wealth actually trickles down to the heirs, it has often been chewed up by long-term care costs, confusing tax hurdles, and terrible financial advice. You aren't inheriting instant liquidity. You are inheriting a complex legal puzzle. So, where exactly is all this money going if it isn't going straight into your checking account? Let's follow the cash. First off, $18 trillion of that pie is bypassing families entirely and going straight to charity. Why? Because the ultra-wealthy would rather set up philanthropic foundations than hand 50% of their life's work over to the IRS in estate taxes. But here is where that massive small business cliff we talked about earlier comes into full focus, and it should honestly make you a little nervous. That sounds like a Wall Street buzzword, but simply put, it means that baby boomers currently own millions of the blue-collar, everyday businesses that literally keep America running. The commercial plumbing companies, the local HVAC suppliers, the massive commercial landscaping fleets. According to McKinsey, there is $5 trillion worth of these boomer-owned businesses hitting the market over the next decade. Here is the terrifying part. If their kids do not want to run them,
And let's be honest, there's a massive cultural and skill gap between the college-educated heirs and the technical requirements of the business. The 32-year-old UX designer living in a Brooklyn loft absolutely does not want to move back to Ohio to run his dad's roofing company. If the kids don't want it and no one buys them, those businesses just dissolve. They vanish. The jobs disappear. The hard assets get liquidated for pennies on the dollar. That entire generation of wealth just evaporates into thin air. This is not a rising tide lifts all boats scenario. The Great Wealth Transfer is a massive consolidation event. Private equity firms and massive soulless corporations are standing by right now with billion-dollar war chests, just waiting to scoop up these dissolving businesses and properties for a fraction of their actual value. The ultra-rich get much, much richer, while everyone else fights over the scraps of liquidated estates. To understand how you can actually profit from this instead of becoming a victim of it, you have to understand how we reached this tipping point in the first place. We are slamming headfirst into the great boomer retirement wave, and it is violently colliding with the reindustrialization of America. For the last 40 years, society shoved a very specific cookie-cutter script down your throat.
Go to a 4-year college, take on massive student loan debt, get a safe corporate job, sit in a cubicle, and blindly throw 10% of your paycheck into a 401k. While millions of people were busy blindly following that script, a massive chunk of boomers were out there building unsexy, highly profitable blue-collar businesses. Now that college-to-corporate pipeline is cracking under its own weight. We are collectively realizing that you cannot run a functioning economy entirely on middle management consultants and app developers. We actually need people to build things, fix things, and maintain our crumbling infrastructure. But there is a massive, systemic culprit making this transition a nightmare. The current financial advisory system is completely broken. It was built in the 1980s to help 65-year-olds buy municipal bonds and annuities. It was absolutely not built to help 35-year-olds successfully transition a $10 million manufacturing company from an aging, stubborn founder. The system is failing to bridge the gap. The old-school advisors do not know how to talk to tech-savvy millennials or Gen Z, and the younger generations do not have the financial literacy to manage physical, complex assets. Because of this massive communication breakdown, incredible wealth-generating assets are just being liquidated and sold off to Wall Street. It is an absolute tragedy for the local economy, but for you, it is the opportunity of a lifetime. That massive advice gap we talked about earlier, where surviving spouses and unprepared heirs are left navigating complex estates without modern guidance, is actually the exact gateway to understanding why this wealth won't be distributed equally. Let's break down the landscape of this transfer and look at the generational pie so you know exactly who is getting what and why the slices are so wildly uneven. Think of this entire situation like a massive, high-stakes game of musical chairs. The music playing is the retirement and aging of the boomer generation. When the music finally stops over the next 10 to 20 years, who is actually going to be standing in front of the real estate, the small businesses, and the massive stock portfolios? First up, Generation X. They are the immediate beneficiaries, technically in line for about $39 trillion, but they are also completely exhausted. Gen X is the sandwich generation. They are caught right in the middle, currently paying for their kids' wildly expensive college tuitions while simultaneously paying for their aging parents' memory care facilities. So that $39 trillion, a massive chunk of it is not going toward buying yachts or starting cool new companies. It is going straight out the back door to healthcare conglomerates and universities just to keep their families afloat. Then you have the millennials. On paper, you are the long-term winners. You are projected to inherit roughly $46 trillion. But that wealth is coming later. You have to survive decades of market volatility, insane inflation, housing crises, and massive economic shifts before you see a single dime of it. If your retirement plan is literally just waiting for your parents to pass away, you are playing a very dangerous, miserable game with your financial future. Finally, Gen Z is the late-game wild card, sitting on a projected $15 trillion. They are entering an economy completely different from the one their grandparents built, with totally different values around technology, sustainability, and physical ownership. Back to our musical chairs analogy. If you are just waiting around for a rich relative to hand you a check, you aren't even playing the game. You're just watching from the sidelines while Wall Street buys up the chairs. So enough doom and gloom. How do you actually get a piece of this $124 trillion pie without relying on rich parents? You have to move from being a passive observer to an active participant. Here's your playbook. Here are the 4 actionable steps to capitalize on the greatest financial shift in human history. Number 1, the small business play. Remember that $5 trillion small business cliff we talked about? Stop looking for an inheritance and start looking for an acquisition. That sounds intimidating, but simply put, it means you can buy a highly profitable, already established business from a retiring boomer using the bank's money instead of your own. You do not need to invent the next big Silicon Valley tech startup. You just need to find the local commercial HVAC company whose owner has bad knees and just wants to retire to Florida. Let's make this concrete. Meet John. John didn't have a trust fund. He found a retiring owner selling a $2 million HVAC business. Instead of needing $2 million in cash, John used an SBA 7A loan. That sounds complicated, but simply put, it means the U.S. government literally guarantees these loans to help regular people buy small businesses. John acquired a massive cash-flowing machine with just $100,000 down. He used the profits the business was already making to pay back the loan, completely replacing his corporate salary on day one. There are literally thousands of boomer-owned businesses out there right now with absolutely no succession plan. They are begging for a young, hungry operator to step in. Number 2, real estate positioning. Roughly $25 trillion of this wealth transfer is tied up in real estate. Boomers own a massive, disproportionate portion of American homes. As they inevitably downsize or move into assisted living, an absolute avalanche of properties will hit the market or need managing. Stop just saving for a house in the traditional 20% down suburban sense. Position yourself in the transition. Look into property management for aging homeowners who can't maintain their rentals anymore. Explore house hacking. That sounds trendy, but simply put, it means buying a multi-unit property, living in one unit, and having your tenants pay the entirety of your mortgage. Or if you absolutely don't want to deal with clogged toilets and angry tenants, look into REITs. A REIT is a real estate investment trust. That sounds complicated, but simply put, it means you buy a stock that represents a fractional piece of a massive real estate portfolio. Look for REITs that specialize in senior living facilities or healthcare real estate. Don't fight the trend. Follow exactly where the demographic demand is going. Number 3, the professional pivot. There is a desperate, screaming demand for professionals who can act as the bridge between these disconnected generations. Position yourself as the trustee or the advisor. You absolutely do not need to be a Wall Street banker in a custom suit to do this. The ecosystem of wealth transfer is massive. It desperately needs specialized tax accountants, estate law paralegals, senior downsizing real estate agents, professional home organizers, and local business brokers. There is a massive demand for people who can bridge the communication gap between boomer wealth holders and the tech-savvy younger generation. If you can help a 75-year-old comfortably and legally pass their assets to a 35-year-old without everything blowing up in family court, you can write your own ticket. Become the bridge, and you get to charge a toll. Number 4, financial literacy as an asset. Stop treating your career as just a job where you trade 40 hours of your week for a miserable paycheck. Start treating it as an asset acquisition strategy. If you currently work for a small to mid-sized business owned by someone over the age of 60, pay close attention. Buy the skills that make you the logical, irreplaceable successor. Learn the unsexy operations. Learn the basic bookkeeping. Learn how to actually manage the staff. When the owner is finally ready to tap out, you don't want them looking for an outside buyer or a private equity firm. You want them looking directly at you.
When the time comes, you can structure what is called a seller-financed deal. That sounds complicated, but simply put, it means the current owner essentially acts as the bank.
You buy the business from them, and you pay them their purchase price out of the business's own profits over time. You take over with zero outside debt. But they will only do that if they trust you know exactly how to run the machine. Now, let's bring this all together, because this is where the rubber meets the road. The $124 trillion great wealth transfer is not a myth, but it is definitely not a guaranteed lottery ticket either. It is a massive, slow-moving tectonic shift in how wealth, leverage, and ownership are distributed in America. The money is moving. The businesses are changing hands. The real estate is shifting. For decades, we have been conditioned to think that building wealth means clipping coupons, skipping out on a cup of coffee, and praying the stock market goes up a few percentage points a year. But true generational wealth is built during moments of massive systemic transition. This is your moment. If you do absolutely nothing, you are choosing to let private equity firms and Wall Street monopolies sweep in and buy up the backbone of the American economy while you sit back and complain about how expensive rent has gotten. You have to start treating your financial life like you were the CEO of your own holding company. Your immediate next step is to audit your environment. Look at the company you work for. Look at the aging business owners in your local community. Look at the properties in your neighborhood. Start having the conversations that most people are too intimidated to have. Ask an older business owner what their exit strategy is. You will be shocked at how many of them just shrug their shoulders and say they don't even have one. The largest transfer of wealth in human history is not happening on some invisible trading floor in New York. It is happening right now, right in your backyard. It is time to stop watching from the sidelines. Step into the arena, position yourself exactly where the money is flowing, and make absolutely sure you get your cut.